Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. The CFL is on the short strokes. I'm Candid Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome and thank you for being here, for watching the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Don't forget to subscribe to Candid Stanisci 1030 on YouTube. Now on CFL Talk, joining me as usual is Sportsnet's David Morassutti. David, how you doing, sir?
Doing pretty well. How are you doing?
Oh, just fair.
I was gonna say you're dealing with a little bit of a cold. You're the change of weather.
Yeah, cold and flu, and it isn't COVID. I tested myself, so it isn't COVID. Not that it really matters, because if this is how COVID feels right now, it feels just as bad as the cold and flu has felt over the years. So, and I haven't had my flu shot yet, which I should be thinking about, I guess.
Yes, definitely.
I'm into that, I believe it's okay. I did without it, and then I tried it, and it's been very helpful in making me feel better every winter, which I think is really important. And it's important. How about you?
Doing well. Just got a lot on the brain thinking about Grey Cup coming up, NHL season starting up. It's October. November are just nutty.
I have to say, I have to seriously say, and say it with total certainty, it's a crazy time of year for sure. For me too, because you got to think about what you're going to watch, right? Are there enough hours in the day to watch every hockey game, every football game? We talk about football here in the Canadian Football League, and I watched a full Buffalo game front to back. But we're not here to talk about that. But in the sense that it just, I got on a real, because I'm sick, I'm sitting under a blanket, got nothing to do, and I'm going, okay, football, okay, football, okay, more football, okay, football, okay, football. Oh wait, a hockey game. Anyway, so yeah, so it's been it was a great weekend for me watching football. Not being well was kept me under the blankets and watching football. So that was the silver lining in the whole thing. And this was a very interesting week in the Canadian Football League, because we begin those eliminations, those games that basically peel off teams who haven't played well enough to compete for a playoff spot. And we saw that this week, and we saw some consequential games that made an impact on whether a team makes the playoffs or not. And there weren't many games this week. I see here there are only 3. It seemed like there was more than 3.
No, yeah, they're now it's
only
only
3.
now there's only 3. So there were.
Yeah, that's why I had time to watch the Buffalo Bills game. But anyway, I guess we could start with, if you don't mind, Winnipeg and Hamilton. This was a game where Winnipeg was going for their 8th straight win. And guess what? They did it. And David, ever since Brady Oliveira came back, and let's keep that in mind, it's when he wasn't in the lineup that Winnipeg was losing. He got in the lineup, and this is a whole different team with him at running back.
Well, what it is you force Winnipeg to be a one-dimensional team when they don't have the running game, right? And so with Oliveira out, they weren't able to really do. Zach Claros was having to do everything, right? The Blue Bombers do not want Zach Claros to be dropping back and throwing it a lot, right? It puts him at risk, to take more hits than he should. It, prone to maybe force throws that he shouldn't be throwing and things like that. And so, especially at the start of the year, there was a lot of concern for Zach Claros, right? I think he went like one. I'm just looking right now, actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First 5 games of the season, he did not have a touchdown, and he had 4 interceptions. It's not good for a quarterback, right? Actually, sorry, I should say first 4 games because he didn't play the 5th game because they sat him out for that game. That was the one game he missed. So the first 4 games he played, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. It's not exactly an ideal start. Then then things start to pick up where you got the running game going. Like he's not throwing for a bunch of touchdowns. I made the stupid claim that Winnipeg's offense and maybe Claros weren't going to be good enough to compete this year. Remember when I said that and they went on and put 55 points on Edmonton? Literally a few days later, we hadn't had a show since then. Um, yeah,
Aren't you grateful?
I think Zach Claros is going to be okay. Like the last 2 games, okay, he's thrown for 633 yards between the 2 games. Funny enough, the first game but they scored 55 points and he had over 400 yards, which again, when was the last time a QB in the CFL had over 400 yards in a game? He only made 26 pass attempts. You would think a guy threw for 400 yards, 30s, maybe closer to the 40 passing. Nope. It was the most efficient butt whooping I'd ever seen. 16.6 yards per attempt in that game.
Doesn't speak well to the DBs and defense of the other team,
Yeah.
though, does it?
So now we bring it to the game against Hamilton. So why is that important? Well, he only had 19 pass attempts. He
That's
still
right.
threw for 200 yards, so 10.6 average per attempt, which is pretty good for a CFL quarterback. It's not bad. He had the touchdown, but then Brady Oliver, as you said, 24 carries for 147 yards and a touchdown.
24 carries. That's more carries than passes.
They gave the ball to Brady Oliver. He was the quarterback in this game, is what we were trying to say.
Well, the fact is, if you can't stop the run, your linebackers have to pull up. They have to come up closer to the line of scrimmage. If that's the case, that means the quarterback has a pass, into the second level, and doesn't need as much time to wait to make that pass because the linebackers are playing a little forward to stop the running game. So it's we always talk about. I always believe and think about the team aspect of the Canadian Football League. It's very team oriented, and the quarterback makes the plays and he looks like the hero or the goat on any given day. But when you have an offense that the running game is running 147 yards, which
one player had 147 yards.
One running, the running game, just one player running. Just you're right.
They had two. They had 199, but pretty much 200 yards on the ground.
Yeah. Well, still, I'll say this is that quite positively, you can't predict what the team's going to do that you're defending, and that inability to predict, right, what they're going to do, right, even if a team doesn't have a passing game and then they have to run, it's to me, as far as I'm concerned, that passing game that Zach Collaros can execute with less passes. He's getting, I hate saying this, especially sitting in the seat I'm sitting in, but getting older, the endurance of a player isn't as strong as when they're in their peak, years. And Collaros now is on the downside of his career. And that's I don't mean that as a slight in any way, but the fact is the quarterback has to be a little different. We saw it here in Toronto when Ricky Ray came to Toronto. Right? They didn't let him hang on to the ball long. He threw it quickly, get it out of, the only way to get him to not get hit is to get rid of the ball quickly. And so when a player gets older, physically, they're getting older. They're more prone to injury, as I think you alluded to. And also it's the freshness that a quarterback has, that if he's not running around the whole game, he has a little more freshness to him. And that's why the key here is Brady Oliveira. And they were talking about it on the broadcast of him probably being, in their eyes, it seemed, this guy's MOP material.
Oh yeah, I you know what? Like we've been a lot of people have been having trying to figure out how we're gonna vote for MOP this year, right? Who
Right.
is worthy of MOP? Right now, most outstanding Canadian. That at first there were a lot of options. Now I think the options have kind of dwindled a little bit, right? In terms of like it being, a pretty
Yeah, an
big
8-game
rate.
window, a 10-game
Yeah,
window, a 14-game window.
MOP. The choices I thought of are gone now, in my opinion. They're not worthy of it. Like Oliveira probably is the most outstanding player because he is the reason why his team went from being oh, I don't know if he's going to be. I don't know if this team's going to hit. If Winnipeg's going to make it to the playoffs. To yeah, they might just go on and win the whole Grey Cup. Like he, he's had such a good year, and I think it's. Some have said that it's not even his best season, which I'd probably say okay, like pretty similar to last year. He maybe doesn't have the touchdowns that he had last year, but he's averaging the same amount of production as he did in past years,
Yeah,
right? Like,
well, the good news for him is you're comparing him now to how other players are doing this year,
yeah,
right? Like
right.
Rourke isn't here like he was a couple of years ago, right?
Well,
You got
exactly, right.
right.
And it's tough to give it to a running back the MOP. How many times we said it's likely always going to be a quarterback, but Claros, in my opinion, he's only recently been really good. He had his struggles throughout the year. So like, do you give it to a guy who's had struggles, right? If Hamilton made the playoffs, MOP probably could have gone to Bo Levi Mitchell, but now,
Ha,
he didn't
yeah.
play like an MOP last week. So there's a lot of this year might be one of the tougher years to vote on it, and obviously we have a vote on it, and I take it very seriously when trying to figure out who exactly is worth it.
Well, the consistency of players, is an important factor. We talked about Brady and Oliveira. By that I mean Brady. We can talk about the quarterbacks, and really, if you eliminate Caleros' start of the season, then he could be a consideration. But he's not. He's going to be in the shadow of Brady Oliveira. And what's really sad is that you can only have one player from each team. So so even if you have two players that are pretty much the same, you can
Mhm.
only pick one, which makes it really tough. And
That's what happened last year,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
People are like, Claros got the nomination, but people thought it should have been Brady. I mean,
absolutely.
Brady did end up getting the Canadian nomination, which obviously that was going to happen. But yeah, it's crazy how that all turned out for sure.
So it's easy. This game was won by Winnipeg, based on the teamwork of those two players. They both played well. The offense played well, and the running back played well. And we forget, and it's kind of hard, but really one of the things that really is punishing is the Winnipeg defense, and they've done a great job since Brady came back, together with Brady Oliveira, where they put Oliveira in the offense, not in the with the goalposts at their back very often. In other words, they've had good ball possession points on the field that make it easier to work. That's why football's such a team sport. There's so many subtleties in what makes any group or any individual look good in football. And I love what Caleros is doing. It's great to see, great to see veterans like him. The other thing that you were mentioning, and that's something I want to also highlight, is that usually it's a quarterback, but Bo Levi Mitchell comes the closest to being an MOP. Is it another inconsistent year for quarterbacks, or is it this year? It's not about health. It seems the past few years have been about quarterbacks staying healthy. This year, it's strictly consistency that's been a problem for starting quarterbacks.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Really.
For Fajardo, like I think Cody Fajardo would have been. I think he likely will be the East nominee for MOP, but his injury took away some of the maybe just the giving him the downright certainty
Yeah.
that he was going to be MOP. Yeah, I know there's a lot of inconsistent play, right? You got Vern Adams Jr., who I thought likely you could have been the West MOP nominee, but now he's
My
silent. He's
goodness.
on the shelf.
He was the MOP and candidate, and the coach is saying no, 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 no. He's not our starter. I mean, to go from MOP to not being the starter. I know they're paying their other quarterback a lot of money, and he's Canadian, but he's not looking really great. But still, Adams is not the go-to move right now. But let's go back to this game with Hamilton. Hamilton in this game, David. If I'm a Cat fan, I don't know how much hair I got left. There were so many opportunities for Hamilton, and not to take anything away from Winnipeg or suggest that Winnipeg didn't deserve this victory. They definitely did, no doubt about it. But there were a lot of things in this game: missed catches, bad tackles. They really did not play a mistake-free game. Hamilton made a lot of mistakes, not just penalties. They made a lot of mistakes, and you can't make those kinds of mistakes against a team that's playing as well as Winnipeg is.
No, that defense is the best defense in the league. It not just the best defense, dominant. Like, it's scary how good that defense is, right? You look at like, we talk about Brady Oliveira and what he's done to lift the Blue Bombers, but I don't think it's been talked about how much this defense has really propelled Winnipeg, right?
How many yards did Hamilton get rushing?
30. Okay.
Total. And that's total.
They couldn't run the ball. Bo Levi Mitchell couldn't throw the ball. He was like under 50%.
They couldn't catch the ball.
Right. 27 points they allowed against Edmonton, but it was a blowout. Like, they've only allowed since they started going on this run, only one game have they allowed over 30 points, and that was against Saskatchewan back on Labor Day Classic, right? They if you get 25 points on this defense, you better hope you limit that Winnipeg offense, because you're not getting many opportunities to put up points against this Winnipeg defense. And that also has allowed the offense also play in a way that they can be patient. They don't have to force things, and when their opportunities are there, they're going to take the opportunities because they know the defense can now help them out. It wasn't like that before, though. That's why the defense was really struggling, because the offense was playing so bad. The defense couldn't help them out. Now the defense is gelled. Let's not forget also, I believe Jordan Younger took over as the defensive coordinator this year. So
ex-Argo,
that was a big change, right? And when you get a new defensive coordinator in there, it's going to take time for it all to gel. Because I'm trying to remember who was the defensive coordinator before, because I know they made changes to the coaching staff back in January. So I'm trying to think who. I can't remember who the I'm blanking on who the defensive coordinator. I think it was Glenn Hall. He's still hanging around, but yeah, sorry, Richie Hall. Richie Hall, right?
Not the goaltender.
So yeah, Richie Hall is still on the staff, but this is Jordan Younger's defense.
Yes. So yes, and you know what? He's been in the business for a while. He has on his resume an important factor. He's an ex-Argo, which seems to be, if you want to be a coach at the CFL, you got to go through Toronto. If you want to be a quarterback or you want to be a coach in the Canadian Football League, it helps to go through.
All roads go through Toronto.
It seems, 2012 Grey Cup winning Argonauts, man. Holy mackerel. The coaches and the players that have become coaches that were on that team, it just never ends. And Winnipeg is well coached. We're a long way from where when O'Shea started. He didn't have a monumental start. He didn't have didn't start, hitting the ground running. He crumbled a little bit and rumbled, and he eventually became what he is now, probably the best coach in the Canadian Football League. I don't think there's a better coach in the Canadian Football League, and I don't think there's a guy who sets the table for the team kind of togetherness that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have had over the years. And I say this with the fact in mind that they have blown Grey Cups, and this team has not had problems getting past that kind of stuff. And when I say blown Grey Cups, the Argos one of them, Montreal won one of them. I don't mean it in the sense that those teams didn't deserve to win at all. That's not what I mean. But from the perspective of your team, when you lose a Grey Cup and you had a great season and you lose the Grey Cup, it's like you blew it, right? And getting over that frustration and managing it the way the Winnipeg Blue Bombers do. It's with their GM as well, and the selection of players and the way they treat the players. But this is a team that none of us should be surprised. I am surprised that after the first 5 games of this season, did I think we'd be sitting here with a record that they have? Hell no. They recovered well. I mean, we talked about Brady Oliveira, but the team as well, held together so that one part and that one change, they were ready for it. The team was ready to play really well. They didn't blow up the team because they had a bad start. They knew that, and like I said, their identification of players, systems, and maintaining a level head. That team does it better than any team that in the past 5-6 years, more than any team I've seen in the Canadian Football League. Yeah, I think that's their biggest strength, really, is their level-headedness and their ability to separate work and accomplishments. Work never changes. The accomplishments will, but the work never changes for them.
No, it doesn't. And I do think that when you look at Winnipeg specifically, it's a culture that they built, right? Doesn't matter who's there, doesn't matter what the situation is. They rely on what's worked for them. And people say, oh, well, another year Winnipeg could go. It's likely going to go to the Grey Cup. That's because they've established something, right? And it takes time for it to happen for sure. But it's once it's there, like, I think of like Calgary, right?
How
Calgary
to
in
hang
their
on.
years, they showed you how to hang on and why things have not gone right in Calgary, because that culture needs to be reworked. So I'm curious to see how. I'm curious to see if any team will really give Winnipeg a run for its money, and we might see the first one this week with Toronto going up against Winnipeg and still having something to play for. So, and
Well,
Winnipeg still has a little bit to play for too.
and they have a little bit of vengeance on their mind because
Yeah.
one of those early losses, one of the few losses they've had, one of the early ones was, of
Mhm.
course, against the Argos.
Yeah, that is true.
So that they'll have that motivation as well, and they'll be playing at home. And the Argos have. If we can talk about that, since we're talking about Winnipeg, we won't forget to talk about the other 2 games, folks. Um, the Argos have some proving to do, and as a segue, they're going to be playing against a team that's playing really well. This is going to be interesting because the Argos have been a little, they've been fluctuating a little bit the past couple of weeks, right? They've had very interesting victories, and then you go and you see BC play the way they did, and you go, well, maybe that wasn't as good a victory as we thought. This is going to be the kind of victory that says to the team, we want them to know we're going to the playoffs. This is a perfect game for them to play really well against Winnipeg to show that they really want to make the playoffs, because a victory against them puts basically one of the final nails in the coffin to Hamilton's opportunity to make the playoffs. So this game is very important to Toronto. And once again, it may not be life and death for Winnipeg as it wasn't with Hamilton. Because, Hamilton needed the game way more than Winnipeg did.
Mhm.
And I think the same thing's true here with with Toronto. They need it more than Winnipeg does. I really believe that. And this is part of the strength, I think, and the mental preparation and the ability of Winnipeg to be level-headed, that they can focus on it's about this one game and we're going to win it. The Argos have said for years now, since Dinwiddie came in, we want to go 1-0. And Winnipeg's probably one of the best teams to go 1-0 in the past few years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting just how like the competitiveness of this game is going to be like for Toronto. Like you want to there's also like the set the tone, right, going up against the top team in the league. They did that against Montreal
Yep,
during 2 weeks ago, and
absolutely.
now they're going to look to do the same against Winnipeg, right? Winnipeg has now got a target. Winnipeg always has a target on their back, but in Toronto, they want to get home field. So
Absolutely. That's what this means.
they understand that they don't have much of an art margin for error between now and the end of the year.
Well, losing this game will probably, if Ottawa wakes up and plays a little better than they have the past couple of weeks, yeah, Ottawa could put the distance necessary between them and Toronto for that home field East final.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's something that could very well happen. I think this game's going to be fun to watch, mainly because Winnipeg's not going to let up. They still want to win the division, right? Because they haven't won the division yet. That game didn't get them the division. It just guaranteed them a home playoff game. So winning the division still, they've got a game that they've got a reason to play this game. Maybe not as much as Toronto, but as Toronto is a little bit, maybe we don't make the playoffs, we lose this game. They give Hamilton another chance.
No, that's that's definitely true. So, I mean, there's a lot when
A
you
lot of
look. Yeah, there's a lot to digest with kind of looking without trying to look too far ahead. But yeah, like the last few weeks, I think have been so great for the CFL in terms of competitiveness, just because all the games have meant something.
All right. So Winnipeg wins 31-10. We mentioned they play Toronto this week at home. The next game on Friday was Calgary and BC. And oh my goodness, you mentioned Calgary. You mentioned, their inability to win and that cliche, culture. BC didn't really look that good in this game. I didn't really think BC played that well in this game. But what I did see was their defense and the interceptions they made when they did the game turned around. The first half looked okay for Calgary, and David, their quarterback, Mayer, he really has a target on his back as far as people criticizing his ability to lead this team. I'm just not sure it's him. I'm just not sure. I don't know. I don't know if it's just him. I think there's more to it than just Meyer's quarterbacking skills.
Yes and no, right? I think when you look at Mayer, this isn't like a first year, right? When you look at when you look at his struggles and not being able to really, take the reins in a way that I think Calgary expected. I think it's twofold. There hasn't been a lot of consistency with this team. There's been guys in and out of the lineup. There's been, like when you look at Calgary, right? Injuries with their running backs, defense have had there's been a lot of things. It's not just quarterback play that's been their downfall, but it certainly hasn't helped their case at all either, in my opinion.
You're raising the fact that leadership is an important component that happens, from that emanates from that position. And they did bring in Matthew Schultz. They would have brought him in sooner if he hadn't have been injured. I've always liked him. I liked him back in Montreal. I liked him in Hamilton, and I like him in Calgary. I think he could give Jake Meyer a run for his money as starting quarterback. And now that they lost this game to BC 32-15, there's no excuse not to run that that quarterback out. That's the other thing. This game, they brought him in late. He looked pretty good. That's not fair because fans like to call it garbage time when a quarterback comes in because a team's losing, then he looks good, right? But part of the look good is the other team's just thinking about not losing, not making him look bad,
Well, yeah, I mean
not
that's
letting the other team in the door.
right. We've always kind of been a fan of Schultz, especially during his time with Hamilton. We felt that maybe he was gonna get an opportunity there. I think if you're Calgary, I think you've seen what you. I think what you need to do, take Jake Maier out of the equation right now, see what Matthew Schultz can do, and see if it's really a quarterbacking issue. Right. I think that's going to be what they might have to do. Right. Is okay. Let's see. Do we have to explore getting a quarterback in the
Yeah.
offseason? Right. Is that the
What's
problem?
the first question that you ask when you're out of the playoffs during the season? Well, let's take a look at what else have we got. That's a natural that's a natural move from when you're not making. It's just such a natural move to give him a chance. It's predictable, really.
It really is. And again, this is the first. I don't know if you saw the stat. This is the first time since
Yes,
1945 that no team from Alberta will make the CFL playoffs. Now, some people will be going, "Wow, that's like it's incredible to think that." But let's not forget, most of the teams in the CFL make the playoffs.
yeah.
Like we're not talking about a
Only two in the West don't make the playoffs, and for a few years it was only one.
right with the
Well, Winnipeg
crossovers.
moved. Yeah, well, when Winnipeg moved over to the East.
Right. Yeah, we also forgot
Yeah,
about when they added another team. So, like to me, Calgary especially, they don't want to be in this position.
no,
They're not used to it, and when the fan base isn't used to it, and when they feel that answers aren't going to be easily found, it turns them away.
and Edmonton passing them is not a good thing.
No, it is
There's a
not.
very deep competitive edge between those two cities for multiple reasons, mostly because they're both in Alberta.
No, I agree with that. You can't let your rival pass you. That's would be like if that's like when with Toronto being in the position that they're in, right? And what Hamilton fans think of that.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's deeper than provincial. That's
exactly.
that's QEW.
Yeah. So it'd be like if there was a team in Quebec
Yeah,
and Montreal was surpassed by them.
and by Quebec you mean Quebec City.
Yeah, I mean
Unique story.
that's where they had been talking about
Yeah,
a team potentially.
yeah. The Calgary Stampeders and the BC Lions. Both those teams um, have been disappointing and disappointing for the fan base because neither of those teams have played to the level that the fans expected going into this season. Can BC, we've talked about Calgary. We know that they need to look at their quarterback. They need to figure out what players are going to come back next year, who wants to play for this team next year. All those questions, they're pretty stenciled, right? They're template stuff, right? Difference is with BC Lions, they've got a real Rubik's cube here because as hard as they are trusting their young quarterback that they signed to a lot of money, they're also the host of the Grey Cup. And we mention this every week when we talk about BC because they do go hand in glove, right? They go hand in glove. The season that BC's having is important to them because they're the home team. They're the home of the Grey Cup this year.
Yeah, exactly. The margin for error. They've put in a lot of money on and off the field for this Grey Cup. They want to return on that investment with a home game involving their team. And look, Hamilton got a bit of a boost, right, with the appearance that they had. Uh,
Just
one
one.
appearance in 2021. Obviously, right in 2022 they didn't. 2023 they didn't get there.
No.
So it means a lot when your team is hosting. It does, and we haven't seen a team win while hosting since
Saskatchewan,
Saskatchewan,
yeah, Saskatchewan,
right?
then Toronto before that, and then BC before that. It was 3 years in a row. I'll never forget.
Right,
That's
and it means so much for that market. BC has done such a great job of really getting the energy, getting people excited about CFL football in that market. That now they had to deliver, and
true.
it was a little rough, but now it seems like they're turning the tide a little bit, and there's still, again, talk about something to play for in the West. Boy, oh boy, yeah, all the teams have made it great, but nobody is nobody has solidified their position. Winnipeg can, I think, with a win, they've clinched.
They all can.
They all now BC and Saskatchewan. That second place is crucial. You want to host at least one game right. You don't want to have to go on the road for both games. And we know also Winnipeg will want that first round bye for sure. So it's going to be, again. I'm very I'm going to be watching that. I'm going to be watching those last few games and just very intently.
Well,
That's for sure.
Harris is healthy, and the BC Lions, that's who they're up against. And the quarterbacking for BC does not look as good as it is for Saskatchewan, which, before we leave the Calgary game, BC needed to win this game. They've won this game, and now we're going to see what happens in the next couple of games because the decision for who finishes second is going to happen. BC 32, Calgary 15. And of course, that leaves us with our final game of the week. And that one was Saskatchewan and Edmonton. Edmonton trying to keep their faint hopes alive. Saskatchewan wanting to ensure a playoff position and make that position be second overall. They helped themselves in both those cases against Edmonton. And this game, this was another game where Edmonton, the loser, just played mistake football, made too many mistakes.
You can't make mistakes in these games. You just can't, and you learn. This is where you learn, unfortunately, in the wrong way possible, how crucial these mistakes could be, especially against good teams. We talked to Ryan Dinwiddie, right, when the Argos were losing. We're not good enough to make the mistakes we're making. That's okay. It's a lot of teams in this league, unfortunately, are learning that if you make mistakes, teams aren't good enough to overcome the mistakes. And credit also to the other teams for taking advantage of those mistakes as well.
And again, if we use the running game as a factor, a major factor in a win, well, the running game for Edmonton was a grand total of 15 yards. For Saskatchewan, it wasn't much better, 53. And then when you look at the quarterback, once you factor out how many throws McLeod Bethel Thompson made, the results are pretty much the same. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 300, almost 400 yards each. And we saw a different result.
Yeah, no, right. But you also wonder, can with the results, are they sustainable as well, right? You can get lucky in certain periods, and you can make your own luck as well. But mistakes are. It's nice when a team can capitalize on mistakes, but what if the other team doesn't make those mistakes?
Right. What do you
So, what are you going to do otherwise?
Yeah. This game was important to Edmonton and Saskatchewan. And not that I have any skin in this game, not that I in particular want Edmonton to win and Saskatchewan to lose. But I do like the improvements Edmonton has made, and they're doing it without, I think, their number one quarterback. which bodes them well for next year if he can get healthy. Um, you know, it's important that Edmonton continue their growth, which they're doing. Right, they're proving that they're a pretty good team. Makes me wonder. I won't speak for you. Makes me wonder about why Jones couldn't accomplish this kind of stuff with his team, and because they didn't make any drastic changes to the team after he left. It is one of those. I think it became one of those things where we talk about in sports where the coach stops being heard.
Yeah, no, it could very well be right. It's the message changes, accountability changes as well, and you know, has the game plan really changed? No, I don't know if it's really changed. I mean, there's been some change. Philosophies can change a little bit, but I also just think that Chris Jones has been known as a defensive guy,
Right.
but they had more than defensive issues that he did. I mean, they did have defensive issues there, but yeah, I just think this was just needing a new voice in the room, needing a change in what was being done because you lose confidence, you lose your he lost, I wouldn't say accountability in that room, but I think people are just like, I've had enough of us
Trust.
being, yeah, trust. That's it.
Hey,
Right.
trust.
When things aren't going well, it's hard to trust what the coach is telling you what to do. Right. And look,
Because
Hamilton's
you need a lot of trust to execute. Execution
exactly.
requires the belief in the system you're executing.
Exactly. I don't know if there was a lot of belief in what Chris Jones was selling. Because as a coach, you have to be a teacher, but you also have to be a salesman. You have to tell the guys, if you do what I tell you to do, you're going to be successful. Well, if
Mhm.
you're not going to be successful, right, something has to change. And if the players feel like that what the coach is saying is selling isn't working, they're not going to buy into it. So I think that was a little bit of it, but let's not forget, even in the Chris Jones era, they didn't give up 55 points in a game. Right? There's still problems, but what this whole situation has allowed for is them to say, okay, we're taking Chris Jones out of the equation. What's really going on here? Why isn't this working? And now they're getting a chance to really see it.
And that it's working a little better, but not good enough right now. And you know what? There is a learning curve with a new coach. The learning not just what the coach is trying to lay down, but the coach knowing who he's dealing with. Even though the coach was around the team, like he got a running start, so it's not like he was a blank page when he arrived. He knew the players, so there was that advantage. But it's about execution, and I gotta say, Thompson threw 41 passes. If you're throwing 41 passes, you're not running very well.
Nope.
And if you're not running very well, here comes that word again. I love that word in football. Predictability. You don't want that. Predictability, bad. Surprise, good. And you're not surprising anybody when you're throwing the ball 41 times.
No, and especially when your quarterback has 2 interceptions and you also have a fumble. They
Yeah.
lost a turnover battle, right? You look at these games and you look at where they have success and where they have struggled. It's interesting because there are games where they have run the ball, but the problem is you need the two to work together. You can't in the CFL, you can't just run the ball all the time. You do have to pass, right? Because then eventually they're gonna say, all right, we're gonna load up the box and you gotta beat us through the air. Right.
I,
And
ju- I just don't see how they can't make a success out of Javon Leake. We watched him every week, and he
yeah,
has
I mean,
the
but as a
ability
returner,
to
he's great.
miss.
But it's about for running backs. It's about finding the holes. You trusting your offensive line. Yeah, he's had weeks where he's done very well. But I look back and I'm going to bring an NFL term in here, and I hate that I'm doing that, but I think it's notable here
The
that Eric,
definition along the bottom of the screen. kidding. I'm just kidding.
Aaron Rodgers said, the Jets have had a really bad year with their run game. And he says, we try to establish the run game first. Maybe we need to establish the pass so that the run can succeed.
Well, I agree with that. You have to establish one or the other to get the other.
So I think what teams are doing is, okay, you want to run the ball 20, 25 times. Here, we're going to load the box. You got to beat us with the run.
Absolutely.
Right. But the thing is, you have to decide. You have to find that balance. I think Edmonton, because they, when you look at this game against BC specifically, right? Not BC, sorry, against Saskatchewan. Oh, coffee hasn't kicked in yet. When you look at this game, all right, they were. And it's funny. I was watching the Leaf game. I was at the Leaf game, and I was recording the game. But I looked quickly down at the score and to see it was 1-0 after the first quarter. Said, "This like we've had more goals in this hockey game so far than we did in this football game. What are we doing here right now?" But you're trailing, right, going into halftime. The switch flips. Now we feel like we have to change our strategy and what we're doing. And look, Saskatchewan's a good defense. They're going to try to take away your strengths, and that was running the ball. But Edmonton also wasn't very patient with it. How many times they run the ball? Javon Leake had 9 carries. Justin Rankin had 4. Prukop had the two sneaks. Like, I'm sorry, if you think that running the ball 13 times is going to be enough, you're kidding yourself, frankly. So I think, yeah, they've got to find that balance. They got to go back to what was working for them. The running game was working for them. It means that it takes pressure off McLeod Bethel Thompson. McLeod Bethel Thompson should not be throwing 41 times in the game. The numbers have looked good, but then when you look at the results, it's like, yeah, maybe we didn't go about it the right way.
Well, in football, the term that is best to describe defense is bend, not break. So you can bend and give up a lot of yards.
Yep.
Not break.
Yeah. But I don't know if you saw. I mean, we didn't even talk about it, but McLeod has not been a very happy fan with. Hasn't been very happy with the CFL officiating.
Well, he's not a very. I'm gonna just, he is a commentator on the all things CFL. He's been like that for years.
Mm-hmm.
This is nothing new. It's just now he's keen on the officials, specifically, right? Where before he was keen on the rules and how the league doesn't protect players, and he's always been a pro player or anti-league, anti-official kind of guy, and so I'm not surprised by it. Tell us about it.
Well, I mean, they were down by 4. You're right, going and they have a chance to score a touchdown. Bethel Thompson throws you talk about Javon Leake. He threw a pass to Leake. Originally, he was going to be, I think, ruled out at the 1-yard line, right, and that would put them in a position to go out and try to win the game. But sorry, well, because I think they were trying to go for a touchdown. Mm-hmm. They get this play to the 1-yard line, but it was originally ruled a catch. But then the command center comes in and says no. Essentially, the ball. I think they said that the ground helped him.
Trap the ball.
Yeah, he didn't trap the ball, and so. Then Edmonton then chooses to have to kick the field goal. Well, unfortunately for Edmonton, that was the last opportunity they had to try to score. So essentially, instead of 7 points, right, they had to settle for 3.
Either way, they needed a touchdown.
And
They
I
needed
think
a
and I
touchdown
think that
before
would
the
have tied the
Colts
game.
did
That would
their
have tied the game. That would that have tied them or given them a chance to take the
tied.
lead,
Well, if they would have gone for 2 points, it would have given them a chance to win. They would
right?
have gone for 2 if they had
So
the touchdown.
right. So
Was it 28-21, right? Let me
28-24.
20, yeah, but I mean, it was 28-21 at the time
Yes.
that you're referring to. So
Yeah.
yeah, so they needed a touchdown either way.
They
So
needed a touchdown and field goal to tie the game. So they're trying at least to send it to overtime. And
right.
so yeah, he was very critical, saying a lot, everything's going against us. But sheesh, when is it gonna get any easier? Like you threw
Well,
two you made mistakes too, right? So he's very outspoken. We've known this for a long time.
oh, for a long time.
But yeah, so that's a tough way to lose for them, unfortunately.
Yeah, a tough way to lose, but they did lose. It wasn't an official's mistake. It was basically just the rules reared its ugly head and yanked them, back so that they couldn't get the touchdown they needed to tie the game. It was a great game. They played well. McLeod did what he could with the system that he had in play. When we talk about him throwing 41 times, it's not up to him alone to throw 41 times. Other things have to happen to help bring that number down, right?
Play calling has to change, right?
Right, and the play calling, though, unfortunately, is dependent on the success of the plays that you're making. You're trying to make your successful plays. It's like you were talking about. If the run isn't working, you go to the pass. Well, do you keep doing the run or do you try to do the pass? And then you got to try something, right? So the run wasn't working. They kept defaulting to pass, and if they could, I don't understand sometimes, David, why it's so hard, for teams to put together a running game better than what we've seen in some cases, like 15 yards by their, the key running back, 30 altogether. It makes me wonder how can the other team be that good that you can't get more than 30 yards rushing? Can they be that good? Or does some of the responsibility go on you for not being able to run the ball? It's the futility is sometimes it amazes me that it seems like you almost have to try not to be successful at times.
Yeah, no, I agree, right? If you've shown you can run the ball, why are you so eager to get away from it at times? It's essentially true, but
There's a type of running back that you need to have. And why don't you have that running back? See, that's it. It's like, I don't mean to change sports, but I always maintain that when the Leafs had Campbell as their goaltender, I didn't think he was the right goaltender, not because of his ability, his talent, but it was his size. What I'm trying to say here is there, and the same thing with their defense, right? There's some things you need in sport, and sometimes size is important. It just matters. And your scat back running backs are awesome. I love Pinball Clemens, loved him when he played. Loved Leon McQuay when he played for the Cardinals and even played for the Argos. But you need a beast at running back. I know the Argos have a guy who carries the ball, Kadeem Carey, who doesn't look tall, big. But you and I have been in the locker room. We've seen him without his jersey on. We've seen what his body makeup. He's a strong person, very strong. And you need that in a running back.
you do.
Look at Brady Oliveira. He's a tank.
Speed is nice, but if you're not able to break tackles, you got to be able to break tackles. You got to be able, because the defenders in this league have gone too good, right? That they can find ways to get to the second levels, get to the holes. You got to be able to shed tackles. That's what Brady Oliveira is so good at. He can go north south,
East
Well,
West.
north. Sorry, he's more of a north. They call him a north-south guy. Like running backs don't run
His
backwards.
cutbacks are amazing. In this past game, they highlighted it in the game, and his cutbacks are really good. The way he
Yeah, but you need that blend. I prefer a running back that has a blend of size and speed. Like
exactly. I'm with you.
I like Deontay McMahon. I like the speed he provides, and he's got elusiveness to him. But I also like to see a running
Khadijah
back,
Perry come out of a pile.
right? Oh, he just got swallowed up. Oh wait, no, he didn't. He actually broke through for. And that happened against Montreal,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Where
what
you
British
thought he was
Americans
being swallowed
all
up
the
and he got broken up. So
yeah.
there's a lot of that going on.
That's what you need. It's what you need. Last year the Argos had Willette. That's what he did until he ran into a couple of health problems that are continuing today. That he was a smash mouth running back. It's a way to go. I'll have to tell you though. It's easy for me to sit here and say, establish a running game, please. Thank you very much. Ordering one running game, please.
Yes.
That's easy to.
Speaking of rushing, it sounds like we need to rush out now.
Yeah, let's take our leave. It was so much fun talking about football, and I did enjoy the Bills game. They did lose. Most of my friends, because I live, here in Southern Ontario, are Bills fans, so they weren't very happy losing like that with the clock dying. David, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Thank you, Frank.
All right, he's David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. I really appreciate you being here, folks, to watch what we do. We love doing it for you. So we're airing live here on Mondays at 4 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network for CFL talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer. Please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check you out next time.